Good morning, Shelley.
Good morning.
It's good to see you, and I'm looking forward to having you come to our Inscribe conference in September. So there's a few questions.
I can't wait.
Good. There's a few questions I'd like to ask you and let our members get to know you a little bit better. And so we'll see how it goes here. So tell us about your growing up years.
I am a person that I like to say, I learned how to be adaptable because we moved so many times. So growing up, my dad was a pastor, so I'm a PK, pastor's kid. I grew up in the church. I was in church the first Sunday of my life and went to all the things, the youth camp, the different conferences and everything that was available at the time. And I was saved and I was baptized at the age of 7. And typically, you think that's going to be, it's a turning point in your life and everything's going to be great, right? Well, the Bible says in this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I, Jesus, have overcome the world. So the very next year, when I tell my testimony, and I won't share all of it here, but the very next year my grandma was murdered. Oh. And at 8 years old, it just rocked my world. Mm-hmm. They had to take me out of the gifted program at school because I was struggling so much. And it was just a really difficult time. We had to move several times because my dad was the executor of the trial, her estate, and was in charge of the trial. And there was a lot of trauma when I was young. Mm-hmm. We moved a lot, and yet God is so good. He is so good, and he doesn't waste anything. And a lot of what I've been through is what I then share in my books today.
All right. Yes, God does not waste any of our pain, and that's something that our members are learning too. In fact, our vice president is going for quadruple heart bypass
wow.
So we are praying for her that God will heal her and bring her back to us. But
yes.
She's trusting God to take care of her. So our prayers are with you, Tracy.
Yes, for sure.
So you talked about coming to know the Lord as your Savior. How does your faith influence what you do?
Oh, it influences everything I do. I had my degree is in physical therapy. So I had practiced as a physical therapist for 12 years. And my husband and I, during that time, we took a break. We went and we were short-term missionaries in the country of Belize for 2 years. I was able to be a volunteer physical therapist for children with disabilities, some of the most rewarding work of my entire life. And my husband did youth ministry. We came back after those 2 years. I went back into a physical therapy job, but we always knew we wanted to have that freedom again, that time freedom, and be able to minister together. And so I kept looking for ways to earn income online. And it was in 2011 that I quit my job, and I was just doing a lot of different things. There's a lot more I could go into, but when God really showed me that author coaching was to be, the primary focus of what I was to do, I kind of left it more general. And I wanted to really have it open to many, many people. And it was, it's not a bad thing, but it was in June of, I think it was 2015, I was reading something that my husband sent me, and it was something I think it was John Piper had written, okay. And he was talking about having a foot in both worlds. And I'm not saying you cannot, there are so many people that are in corporate America or in jobs. There are missionaries where that's where God's called them to be. But that wasn't what God had for me. And he was showing me, and I was so convicted, I was trying to have a foot in both worlds. And I was, in my mind, I thought it's going to limit my income. It's going to limit my influence if I just limit it to Christian authors and pray when I open webinars and share my faith and share what God's showing me and teaching me. And yet I just knew God was asking me to do that. So I really started to make that change in my coaching. And now what I do is I serve primarily Christian authors. Anyone's welcome, as long as they know I'm opening my trainings in prayer. I'm going to share scriptures. I'm going to share stuff that is related to my faith. But what I found in doing that for me personally is that it's actually made what I do even more powerful, because God has always planted a seed of ministry in me. He's planted that seed of prayer and encouragement, and these other gifts other than teaching and speaking. And I now can integrate all of that into what I do. And it's incredible. And I really see some really neat fruit that comes from it. Amazing community in the group that I coach. And so that's just one example, but it really does, it just affects everything that I do.
Right. Good. All right. And when did you first call yourself a writer?
You know, it was interesting because I'm not the typical writer, and I never dreamed of writing a book. I was really good at academics growing up. I excelled in school, but I especially excelled in the left brain stuff, the math and the science. So that's why I went to medical school. And my favorite class was gross anatomy, and I was the first one to make the cut in the cadaver. Like, that was my thing. I didn't really think that I was a writer, but the interesting thing is God prepares us for and he uses our weaknesses. When I was in high school, I was in a school where they kind of spoon fed you and they kind of let you just slide by. Well, then we moved the middle of my junior year of high school. I was kicking and screaming. I didn't want to move. I had all my friends. I was running for valedictorian. I was in the basketball team, the show choir, the this, the that. And yet, it's another story, but God ended up changing my heart because my dad said, it's up to you girls. If you girls don't want to move, we're not moving.
Wow. He
gave us that choice. And finally, I was like, okay, I'm willing to at least go. And all I can say is God changed my heart. We went. It was the best thing. That's when I recommitted my life to Christ. That's a whole other story. But in that time, there was an English teacher, and she gave me my first C. And I was like, a C? I'm used to getting straight A's. And she showed me, I didn't know how to write. That was my junior year. She taught me how to write. I'm getting goosebumps right now. Judy Withrow, if you ever watch this, thank you. Because she taught me how to write. And she taught me how to do the basics of writing. And then she set me up for a successful career in college as well. If I would have went to college not knowing how to write basic papers. And so God was preparing me. But it wasn't until 2008 that I published my first book. It was I was a speaker before I was an author. And after I published that book, I would call myself a published author because I was, but I still had trouble calling myself a writer. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people that are new, especially, struggle with this. And God has shown me recently, a few years ago, that my husband's a competitive runner. He's a running coach. And so we hang out with a lot of really good runners, like people who go to the Olympic trials, people who win like world championships, like people that are really, really good runners, like right. Stephen King's of writing, And so I'm a slow runner and I'm not a very good runner. But so when I compare myself to them and I'm going to races and hanging out with these really high-end elite athletes, I don't feel like a runner. But you know what? I'm still a runner. Right. I'm still finishing the race, albeit middle to back of the pack. Mm-hmm. I'm not winning awards. I don't know if I'll ever win an award, even if I finish first, or even if unless I'm the only one that shows up for the race in my age group, But I'm still a runner. So, God was showing me, Shelley, you're a writer. I want you to, really be able to accept that and to receive that and to speak that and to state that because you're a writer. And so I consider myself a teacher, an encourager, and, I'm in ministry. And a lot of my books are like that. They're either teaching or it's some sort of ministry or encouragement. And yet I'm a writer. So I don't know exactly when it happened. I became a published author in 2008, and I was able to say that from the very beginning. But to actually say that I was a writer, it took a few years.
It does take a while for us to come to that point. I think each of us has a different story to tell there. So you've published over 40 books, which is amazing. Something that you probably never dreamed you would do at the beginning.
Never.
So how has your writing process changed from your first book to your latest book, which is Broken Crayons Still Color, right?
Yes. Yeah. And I have that book here. I have a copy of it. And this was the book that actually got me into art. I added coloring pages into it. And so now I'm an illustrator. Who knew? Oh my goodness.
And an art teacher.
And then I'm teaching art. I know, it's crazy. So yeah, my process has changed a lot. In the beginning, you know, all of us know what it was like to start in the beginning. Some of you are probably just at the very beginning, don't really know what you're doing, you know, and just trying to figure it out. And my first book was I took a bunch of the website articles at the time. I wasn't blogging, they were website articles, but I'd taken a lot of those articles I'd already published over the previous year and I compiled them into a book. Since then, that book has gone through multiple re-edits, at least 2 major re-edits. And it was like this last one, the editor we worked with, she was like, wow, you really, you know, your writing has changed a lot. So I've become a better writer. My writing has improved. Just, you know, anything you practice and you do a lot, you get better at. My writing has improved drastically, but also my processes. So I develop what I call systems, and they're basically checklists or certain, you know, just certain ways that I do things. And it just makes everything run smoother and faster because I know, like, okay, this, I need to do this, and then this and this. I also have a team now, and I've learned so much. I did so many things the wrong way in the beginning, and that's okay. We all learn. And the thing I love with independent publishing, and that's what I do, is I can always upload a revised version, you know, and so you can always, you know, go back and upload. And we just did that with my very first book last year. I mean, completely redid it. And I brought on a co-author. And so anyways, it's just been a process of really learning the systems, now having a team. But with this last book, Broken Crayons Still Color, I really wanted it to be some of my best work, and I did some work with a beta group. So I had a beta group that was giving me feedback along the way, as well as my editor, my professional editor. Mm-hmm. I also included a lot more resources to really make it interactive. And what I find is that, especially with Christian living or Bible study type books, I don't call this a Bible study, it's a book study, but you know, it really helps to have more interaction. So I have the coloring pages, I have the discussion questions and the journaling prompts, I have videos with fill in the blank viewers guides, and I have a leader's guide in the back. And so it's really, really interactive, and it really allows anyone, no matter if they're going through it on their own or with a group, to get the most out of the content.
Thank you for sharing that. So as a writing coach, what do you find writers struggle with the most?
You know, it's really interesting because in the beginning, I just thought writers needed the step-by-step. I thought, okay, if I give them a step-by-step, this is how you do it, and, you know, record all the videos, do all the things, that's all they needed. No. What I found is that so many writers, authors, the biggest thing I think, and what I'm seeing after working really closely with authors over the last few years, is mindset. And there's a lot of stuff we have to work through to even get to the point of applying that step-by-step training. So you can have all the step-by-step training in the world, but if you're dealing with self-doubt, with self-sabotage, with fear, with shame, with some of these biggies, you know, these really big things that the enemy wants to come and really get us to stop, you know, it's going to be this huge obstacle to get over. So when I created my free writing week challenge, it's a 7-week challenge, I knew I had to have something in there about mindset. And so I created over 70 different writing affirmations. About half of them are just general, half of them are based on scriptures, and really trying to help writers and authors start thinking about these things. I really encourage a lot of, you know, if you're a Christian author, to have a prayer team, because the enemy is going to want to stop you. And so having a prayer team, and I, especially when I was writing this book, it was the hardest book I've ever written. I don't know that I was in depression. I mean, it felt like it. I mean, for 5 months while I was finishing that book, but I was emailing my prayer team every week, and then I would think, oh, you know, and I would email them updates. I'm like, oh, that was answered. Yeah, that was, their prayers. And I really believe they got me through a lot of that stuff that I was dealing with, the resistance, the issues. But, it's so important, I think, for writers to realize it's normal. It's normal to feel like you're not good enough. It's normal to have those self-doubts. It's normal to think, why should I write another book on this topic? It's just another book on the same topic. It's already been written. You're not the only one that's ever felt depressed. You're not the only one that's ever had writer's block. You're not the only one that's ever had a spiritual attack or technology problems that may be what my husband and I often call tech demons. You're not the only one. And so I think it's really important as you're writing to be a community of some sort of authors or writers to know that you have support, but also really, really important to have a prayer team, because I do believe that, the mindset stuff, but also the spiritual battle, it can be one of the biggest obstacles that Christian writers especially face.
Mm-hmm. I agree so much. We've experienced a lot of that in our Inscribed Christian Writers Fellowship, especially in the executive. So prayer is one of the most important tools. So you've talked about prayer, you've talked about belonging to a writing group. Is there anything else, any other advice you would give to somebody who's just starting out as a writer?
Oh, I have so much. You know me, Ruth. I could go on and on, but I'll just share a couple of brief things. And along with the prayer team, one thing that God's really been teaching me and speaking to me lately, and I don't hear the audible voice, but really, in my spirit, is Shelley, create with me, write with me, ask me, be filled with me, and I think it's so easy for me. I don't know about others, but it's easy for me to get in a do mode, a go mode, and to be task-oriented, and I need to get this chapter done, or I need to do this, I need to do that. And so just really creating with God, because I find that he has the best ideas. And
amazing.
I know. And so, it's such a simple thing, but it's just such a transformational thing. But then the other thing I already mentioned too is systems. So develop your own systems, but also learn from others that have gone before you. Time by learning from others. And so, people that come into my program, they'll see what my systems are and what I teach, but they'll adapt it for their own circumstances, their own things, and then make sure you save it somewhere. Have like a notebook where you write everything down that you've done or that you do for certain tasks, or have a digital way that you do that, Evernote or whatever you use, Trello, and have your systems, because it's going to make life so much easier. I even go back to certain things. If I haven't published a book for a while, I'll go back and I'll think, now, how did I do that? Mm-hmm. What was that again? And I have to, check my list. Mm-hmm. They also say it saves brain energy. So we could all benefit from that. But then another thing is just to use the tools that are available to automate as much as you can. So I know a lot of writers, they don't like marketing. They don't like sitting behind the computer doing social media. A lot of writers are introverts. It's not interesting for them to do a lot of the marketing things. And so I really recommend using as many of the tools as you can. There's a lot of things for free or low cost that you can use to automate. And that doesn't mean you're a robot. It means it's still your words. It's still your personality. It's still you. But you're able a lot of times to schedule things. You can batch things. Like I call Wednesdays, right now we're doing an interview. Wednesdays is my interview and coaching day, my live video day. Thursdays is my brain day. So Thursdays is where I batch a lot of the really, more difficult tasks in my business. And so sometimes that can really help, as well as batching and doing those things. Schedule your blog post in advance, a month in advance, schedule your social media posts, do things that you can, use the tools that you can. And I know it takes time up front, but oh my goodness, I'm like reaping the rewards right now, and it is so worth it. So those are just a few things.
And that leads us right into conference, because you will be talking a little bit about automation in our VIP day. So
yes.
Highlight a few ideas and whet our appetite for what you're going to be presenting on the VIP day.
Yes, so the VIP day, I'll be going through what I call my author automation system. And it really is taking some of the tools that are available to us, to automate a system, a follow-up system for anyone who buys or reads your books. And so what this system will do is, whether or not they just find you randomly, or whether they find you on Amazon or get a hold of one of your books, is going to provide a system that's hands-off. So once you set this up, people are going to continue to come in, and I teach you ways to create low-cost items like mugs. Like I created this mug for my Broken Crayon Still Color book. I just sold like a couple of those mugs this week, and I didn't do anything. It's because it's automated. And so you can start seeing sales just coming in naturally as people are buying your books. You can build your email list. All of this can be done without having to be scurrying around, feeling like you have to have a newsletter every month. You can set it and forget it. Now, there's always ways you can feed the system with more traffic. You can make it grow faster, but I love, love, love working smarter and not harder. So what I'm going to do is that day, we're actually going to create a blueprint. So you're going to create a blueprint for your book and for your specific situation. You're going to fill in each of the blanks of that system that I outlined for you. And then we're going to go through each of those steps of what it's going to look like and what that would mean for you and your books. So I'm really excited to have more authors really get acquainted with the system and put it into place.
That sounds great. And for your keynotes, what are you sharing with us during that time during conference?
So we're going to be talking about writing and community, and talked a little bit about it here on this interview, but the power of having a prayer team, how having a beta group can really help you in writing your book, getting feedback, and really creating a quality book that you're proud of and that will really reach your audience. That's what I found with my Broken Crayon Still Color. This is now my best-selling book, and it's because I think of that beta group. This was originally supposed to be 12 weeks. It cut down to 7 weeks, which that's when you do your market research. That's typically 6 or 7 weeks is typically the length, but I had to cut a bunch out. But anyways, it was a really powerful, powerful thing that I want to share with authors, and also about getting book reviews. And then we're going to also talk about some of the mindset stuff, because if we don't address that, if we don't talk about that, it's going to be that elephant in the room that's going to really be that almost like the silent thing that paralyzes you in your writing career. So I really want to say, let's talk about it. Let's address it. And I've talked a lot about it with my coaching clients. And so I'm really excited to share some of that as well.
Well, I know I've personally benefited a lot from your materials, and I'm looking forward to having you share with our group here in Canada. Are there any last minute thoughts you'd like to share?
Just really excited to be there with you in September, and I hope many of you do come out for the VIP day and that we're able to spend that intense day together. I'm a person that I am there 150%. So if you're at the conference, definitely make sure to come up to me, get to know me, ask me questions. Let's connect, because that's who I am. That's what I love to do. And so I look forward to meeting you and seeing you at the conference.
Thank you very much, Shelley.
Thank you, Ruth.